Hello, everyone. Welcome to CloudEagle's SaaS Masterminds podcast. I'm super excited to have Sam Middleton from Bloom and Wild today. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, Sam, today. What time is it in UK right now?
It's the end of the day in the UK, so we're just wrapping up the day. It's about 6 p.m.
Oh, wow. Okay. And we are here at 9 a.m. in San Francisco. Sam, for the benefit of the audience, can you provide a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sam Middleton. I'm head of IT at the Bloom and Wild group, which covers our three brands, Bloom and Wild, Bloom On, and Bergamot. So I look after all our IT needs. Pretty much anything that we buy, I look after, and our engineering team looks after everything that we build.
Nice. That's great to hear, Sam. Sam, before we dive more deeper into SaaS and IT and a lot of things, can you share a fun fact about yourself?
Yeah, so before the days of COVID and being locked down, over a 12-month period, I was traveling for work a lot. So I did 27 flights, over 150,000 kilometers flown to 7 countries in 4 continents, all in a 12-month period, which has been intense.
Wow.
Fun.
That is really intense. I totally can relate to it because I myself was an avid traveler before COVID, before CloudEagle. I traveled to around 20 countries. So great to know that you took like 27 flights to 7 countries and 4 continents in such a short span of time.
Yeah.
Now, getting into the thick of things, why don't we talk about your career journey? You have a very interesting journey. You did your master's in computer networks, wireless networks, and then moved into the IT side of things. Can you talk a bit more about how you moved your career from networks to being head of IT here?
So yeah, initially I started straight after uni. I actually went to go and work for Apple. This was just before the iPhone launched, and that was very much a customer service-led role, doing a variety of things, mainly focused in the retail space. Towards my time at the end there, I was supporting new store openings, the infrastructure that run those stores. During that period, I learned a lot around customer service and how you deliver small and large projects. I then sort of went from a really big company like Apple back to a startup called Alpha Sites, and I was IT employee number 1. So it was sort of like there was me and one other guy that started a few months before me. So we were like just those first people trying to work out what we had to look after, and that was where I got to really get into depth around a large area of IT. So it was infrastructure, networking, and offices, SaaS management, but also support, asset management. So it allowed me to have a wide breadth in a small company. And I was with them for 5 years, where they really scaled and grew a third every year. I sort of enjoyed my time there, but ran out of growth opportunities. So I then ironically went to go and join WeWork, which was on this huge upward trajectory, and joined there just as the turmoil began, which was a really interesting experience because I'd been at 2 hypergrowth companies before. So going for a company that was downscaling at the time, but really supporting them with their IT needs and really refining it was a great learning opportunity, and worked with some amazing people there. And then very recently have just joined Bloom and Wild, a much smaller company again, and going back into that sort of supporting them through that scale up stage where companies go from having little problems with IT to slightly bigger problems with IT. So really supporting them in the experience I've had with those previous companies to help them deliver on their goals over the next few years.
Nice. That's very interesting. So you're in a larger company like Apple, then you went to a smaller startup, then you went to WeWork, then again, you're in a small startup. What do you like the most amongst these? Like, do you like working in this larger organization with a lot of things to do, or smaller organization where you have way more things to do with smaller resources?
Yeah, I think when I was at Apple, it was a great place to learn. There were just so many experienced people with really and the alumni network is now insane where some of those people have ended up. So I definitely learned a lot, and having a bigger infrastructure to learn in with more support was a benefit to me. But I think day to day, I enjoy being in a much more sort of smaller organization where decisions are made much quicker. You have much more autonomy over the way that you work. You work directly with much higher stakeholders as well. So for instance, the two sort of smaller companies I have regular emails and conversations with their founders, helping them like support in decisions around like strategy, as well as doing the day-to-day. So I enjoy the variety, and I think I learn a lot with that variety as well. Like you get to stay close to the coalface and learn a lot, like with the day-to-day problems of the business. But then you also get the luxury of having the strategy piece where you get to see that overarching future. Whilst at larger organizations, I probably with WeWork, this was where I noticed it most, is you either are in right at the front of the coalface or you're doing strategy. There's very few roles that allow you to do both, which I think that variety I sort of miss. So another reason why I sort of, after the WeWork, went back to a smaller company, because I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed that variety.
Yeah, absolutely. It's only in the smaller companies where you get to do both strategy and actually execute on it. That's great to hear. Now, you have been a head of IT. What's your career advice for others who are aspiring to be head of IT?
I think it's just to get involved in as many varieties of IT as possible. I think so many people, if you like, there are some people that are real great engineers and they go down these really specific and niche environments like network engineers or SaaS engineers. If you want to get to a point of leadership there, at some point you have to try a bit of everything, because as a head of IT, I don't get to opt out of like, oh, I'm not interested in networking, I'm just not going to think about it. I have to have all understandings of every bit of the sort of pie. So I think generalist being the new specialist is one of these weird things. I would say for anyone aspiring, really focus on lots of different aspects of IT, so you can then evolve into that more leadership position with a better over understanding of the whole estate rather than just individual items.
Nice. So what you're suggesting is try out multiple things rather than just focusing on one. That way you get the breadth and you're growing towards it. What about mentorship? Because I do keep hearing about mentoring. Was there like a mentor or a manager who helped groom you towards head of IT?
So yeah, I think I was in certain aspects in different parts of the company. So I had a manager at Apple, Rob, he still runs the Sydney store. He's like the top manager there, and he sort of gave me random jobs to do, and I couldn't put the pieces together at the time. Like, why am I doing all these random jobs? And it was like the variety of like a bit of inventory management, bit of customer service, bit of technical skills. And then only looking back do I understand he was actually prepping me for this idea of variety being an important part of being a manager. So I like look back on the time that I had with him very fondly. I had the co-founders at Alpha Sites, Max and Andrew, made me so much more commercially minded. I think that's something that's underestimated in IT professionals, like understanding where the profit comes from, how you affect that. So those two were really great like leaders to learn from. And then at my last role, I was hired by Jen Peralta at WeWork, and she's now their CTO, and she's an amazing leader and supported me a lot on more of the sort of soft skills that you need to have in a business and an organization. So I think that those sort of leaders like really like catapulted. And again, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't taken the best of all of them and be ready for a role as with Bloom Wild as having that sort of head of IT scope.
Thanks, Sam, for mentioning all your mentors who have helped you, and great to hear your journey across multiple companies and how you have become head of IT right now. At Bloom and Wild today, can you talk a bit about your priorities for 2023? Obviously, the world has changed, right? Dramatically. Coming out of COVID, there is fear of recession, there is cost cutting everywhere. Have your priorities changed in 2023 compared to what it was in 2022, and how?
So I think our priorities in certain ways haven't changed at all. Like, I think we've got Aaron, that is our founder, has a really clear vision of like offering an amazing product that delight customers. Like that fundamentally hasn't changed. And I think for us during like we're an online business that pioneered like the idea of letterbox bouquet. So the idea is you don't need to be there for the delivery, it can just go through the letterbox. And during COVID, we saw huge growth, like a lot of online businesses. When lockdown came, it really suited our business model, and we really accelerated our growth during that period with the acquisitions of a couple of other businesses, as I mentioned, Bergamot and Bloemon in the Netherlands and in France. And that, I think, was a great period, and like that was the right thing to do at the time. And I think all that's now changing is we're going like, growth is not everything. Like, I think the idea is, it's how do we deliver that same amazing experience that our customers know us and love us for at a profitable way. And I think the idea is, it's just when we've had that ability to take a breather, because we're not doing everything at record-breaking pace, we're trying to, again, refine how many orders we're doing, making sure that we're delivering the best service for the customers. It allows some of our other teams in the structural side, like myself, to focus on cost. And I think cost cutting isn't cost cutting because of the sake of cost cutting. It's very much focused on where was excess spend. So I definitely saw this at WeWork. There was a lot of excess spend. There are a lot of articles about it. And again, Bloom World, when they went through that hyper growth stage, and I see this in a lot of scale ups and startups, when I've like even talking to other people in the industry, is they buy tools because they don't have the ability to vet the tools enough, because the pace of delivery is so aggressive. But I think the companies over the last 6 months have definitely, everyone's got a chance that growth isn't now that really pressing thing. It's making sure that there's the right money in the bank to do what you want with the money you have. So tools that we've been able to reevaluate and make clear decisions about, this is adding actual ROI, we need to keep it, or if anything, spend more on it. And then tools that we're going, the value proposition it offered us 2 years ago when we bought it is no longer there. So how do we reduce that cost?
Nice. I think you brought in two very good important aspects. Like, one is definitely when you're growing, you buy a lot of applications and then they may not be relevant now. And the other one is, you also spoke about expanding to other markets. So one question over there, when you're expanding to other markets from UK, did your technology stack or your SaaS stack change?
I think it was more because of the way we expanded. We didn't expand by opening our own items. We did it through acquisitions, which again, it's like we found brands that really aligned with our brand and had a really good local sort of network and like a fundamental business model that worked in that country, and that's how we expanded. So it was more through that acquisition, you would get excess tooling. So the idea is you'd get duplicate tools, or you would have two accounts that are for the same tooling, so you're not optimize the spending for the new group model rather than each of these individual companies purchasing their own items. So I think for us, it's been more that our tech stack hasn't changed. It's more that we've acquired a tech stack from other people. And from a SaaS perspective, it's much easier than an engineering perspective to work that out. But from a SaaS perspective, it's working closely with different teams to really understand what they're spending and where. And that's, as you know, sometimes easier than harder. And then off the back of that, to really then work out where those ROIs are and which are the tools that have high engagement levels. Yeah,
absolutely. I think acquisition is something which even we have seen, where companies have a lot of duplicate applications when they are acquiring another company, because most of the technology companies do tend to use similar applications, whether it's for marketing or whether it's for engineering side, right? And when they're acquiring and merging these companies, they tend to combine both the accounts into one and get greater discounts, because there is a bigger company which is probably getting a bigger discount, or the smaller company has bigger discounts, right? But now you're able to negotiate and get great discounts. Have you seen this happening with Bloom and Wild, where you're able to renegotiate because you acquired another company?
We've started to, I think it's, some of it is a pro, like that you get to go into a negotiating position and like you're a really strong negotiating position. Sometimes you're caught on the back foot and you've actually got disfrank like accounts all over the place. So it's more like just a tidy up exercise to get them merged together. And then sometimes you get reduced pricing, depends on like some of the bigger players that we work with. We're still relatively small accounts, so it's quite hard to sort of, it's not like a magnitude and change for them, but it sometimes nudges you into that discount bracket in that application. And I think we're still very much, I think from a SaaS perspective of making sure we've got the refined tool set, we're still in the early stages. So I think we've made good progress in documenting what we currently have. It's now, and this we've just gone through our financial planning and really focusing on like which ones are the value add is where we're now like gives us a year, because the cycles are quite long on some of these contracts. So it's like, then it gives you a year to then execute on it ahead of time. But hopefully we'll see some like realizations of, like you say, those savings by merging and then being in different price brackets with different vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the same lines, do you evaluate the SaaS applications of the company which you're acquiring before you acquire them?
So I think a lot of acquisitions, it's so low on like the acquisition value. I think for a lot of companies, that is one of the lowest items on the thing. What is the tech stack? What is the like? Especially, I think the SaaS items that they're purchasing, they see them more as a commodity, and they're like the baggage that comes with what they're purchasing. And I think for us, there was some technical, like when we purchased, I think the Bloemon brand. One, the brand was great in the Netherlands for us. I think also they had a very good technical stack that they built, and we still leverage that for our Bloom and Wild. And it's been really great to see those sort of the best of both worlds merging together to make a better overall tech stack that we build.
Nice.
So I think it's sadly, and I still think in a lot of acquisitions, it's so low on the importancy list that they overlook it. And I think sometimes it's a finance person that comes and looks at it, looks at the P&L, and then really doesn't know what they're looking at. They're just going like, there's a bunch of software application names that will mean something to an IT person, but and I think it's about building those partnerships with those teams to support them much more. And I think that's what I was saying earlier about commercially minded, is like when there's an acquisition going on, being at the CEO's door going like, hey, you're about to do an acquisition, here's the CTO, and he's brought us to come and have a conversation about like, let's go through the P&L, let's support you in these decision-making processes. So I think that's where IT leaders need to be more supportive. But it's sometimes difficult because the acquisitions are sometimes so much confidential, because the whole business can't know, or like certain elements of it. So I think there's a balance there, but sadly at the moment, I think not enough focus is put on to what that SaaS stack is. It's more, as an IT leader, you've got it afterwards, you get it put on your lap, and then you go, can you make the best of this? Which is a challenge.
And you just have to clean it up at the end of the day. Now, you brought in a very good point, which is you had to work between the teams to get this done, right? Like, can you shed a bit more light about how collaboration between finance and IT and procurement teams happen at Bloom and Wild or in other companies which you have seen? More aligned towards getting SaaS spend in the right direction. How does this collaboration take place?
Yeah, I think it's different. I think there's two different models there. I think there's one where you do have a procurement team. Like at WeWork, we had an amazing procurement team. I remember working with Susie that used to work and a couple of her other team that were, it was a bit of a luxury for me. You'd kind of go, I've got this contract, I don't like the price on it, can you help? And then all of a sudden it would come back 6 weeks later and it would be reduced on better terms. And like for having a dedicated procurement team that do have all those direct connections with, and they know the right lingo, they know terminology for when you're in a bigger organization, is just a real luxury. And there's amazing work that can be done with procurement teams if you go to them early enough with when you timelines. So a lot of people still try and renew 2 weeks before the contract rather than 3 months. And it's little things like that. Like that was a skill that I learned from them. They were like, you need to get this in front of us much earlier. And I think with now, when I come to Bloom and Wild and like even at Alpha sites where there was no procurement team, as an IT manager, you are the procurement team, probably also supporting the legal and markup for the technical items. And then you're also working with financing, where does it fit in a P&L? Like how does it affect cost? What's the likelihood of increases? And it's important to just sit with those teams and like really, we're going to be X% of your spend. So we need to work together. How do I help you? And it's like, and I always go in with how do I help them? Because they also this from every other procurement team, and especially for Bloom and Wild, that's a very physical business. So we have warehouses, we buy products to create actual goods that sell. So they're very have a lot on already. So like going to them and just bringing them your problems, like, oh, I've got all this overspend or I don't find it, it's not really useful. So I tend to just go to both. The two teams I tend to sit with the most is finance and legal, to go, hey, how do your systems work? So I'm at least going through the right systems. So when they come back going like, oh, your contract's 90% right, it's got the last 10%, it will help me get that contract approved far quicker, which means we meet a renewal date or we make sure we don't renew something. So I think it's just important to listen to them because they know their sections far better than you'll ever know it. It's really just trying to absorb as much as possible and try and be as supportive. And like at Bloom While, we have Lydia that looks after our forecasting for finance and stuff. And she always jokes when I wander over to her desk, it's like, what is it now? But she's like, at least you're coming to my desk and asking for help. And she is amazing at like presenting, like, here's a bunch of problems I've got, Sam, take them away and can you work on them? It's like, yeah, we can go and work through that list and take more responsibility. And also, last thing on that, with SaaS spend, you'll be amazed how much ends up in random stakeholders. So that shouldn't probably have it in the first place, but they do it because they're trying to be helpful. Yeah.
Thanks for that amazing advice. I think collaboration wise, if you go with, hey, I want this and this and this, then it's just more burden for them. Whereas if you go with, how can I help you? They're probably going to open up more and tell you that, hey, these are the aspects where we need you to take a look at. That's a great piece of advice, not just for collaboration between finance, IT, and procurement. I feel that's a good advice for every team out there. How can I help, rather than saying, hey, I want this and this and this. That opens up the team also to collaborate better. Nice. Now, on the last question, you're talking about balancing cost reduction. Like you're talking about cost reduction. There is a fine line between balancing cost reduction and maintaining those essential SaaS services. How do you figure out doing that?
So there's a couple of different exercises you can take on this. And the one that I start with and what we've been doing a bit at Bloom Wild in the very short term is just looking at where there's product overlap. So for instance, looking at the products that we have, some classic ones are things like Zoom, Slack, like Dropbox. And then you've got things like then Office, Google, and you've got like 4 storage solutions. And it's like, wow, do I really need to be paying for 4 storage solutions? Or you've got 2 video conference solutions. And then you look and compare the feature sets and see where there's an overlap. And then you work out which ones have things that I can cut out and like get rid of, or which things do I have to have because I need to keep them. So for instance, as an example, let's take an easy one like Google. We use Workspace. I still need an email provider. So, and it's unlikely that another company like Zoom is going to offer me email providers or a calendar. So that then helps me make that thought process around, cool, is the value add that we're spending there then worth the money we're spending? So I think that's the place where I start because that's easiest. And then the second version, once you've done that, like big obvious reductions, is like an NPS sort of score. So like ask the question, does this tool need to be part of your day-to-day? Yes, no. And then what value do you get out of it of 1 to 10? I think that gives you a really clear insight and gives you a really nice graph of like, top right is, I need it to do my job and I really love this product. Bottom left is, I don't really need it to use my job and I hate using it anyway. So, and then that gives you a clear direction to take to stakeholders, like tends to be like smaller companies CEO, cool, this is an area your business just doesn't see value in. Like, can we begin to cut it out and work with the stakeholders or work out why you still hold on to it? And then that's allowing the business to drive those decisions rather than it being top down IT saying like, oh, I need to put stuff away. It's like, what do you guys want to hold on to and what do you want me to get rid of? And then work backwards from there and then try and find, like, again, if it's a service they don't like, but we have to have it because it's like a compliance tool, then we have to go, cool, we need to maybe reevaluate the vendor for the compliance tool. So it's moving that spend rather than reducing it.
Got it. Thanks for that. I think there are 2 main things. One is you spoke about consolidation, how you would consolidate applications. And the second one was NPS score to drive down, or rather to drive from a bottoms-up model rather than a top-down model of cost reduction. That is a very interesting one. NPS scores, like how are you doing this physically today?
So we haven't started like Bloom Wild just yet because we've got so many consolidations to do and it's going to take up a lot of time to do that. But it's as simple as like you're looking at the usage of the applications we have. And again, as you know, we're struggling a little bit on the tooling of that to work out who's using which tools. But as you get a better picture of who's using which tools, it's really asking that group of people, the tooling that they have, what do you need? And like, do you like that tool? And then that's what's going to drive and it'll be a very like simple Google Sheets, sort of Google form. Again, it's trying to not spend money to drive money, but it's to use the tools we currently have, and then again, pull that data out, put it in a good graph. And I think just asking, and again, it comes back to, I think some IT teams are very much like, have this historical thing of being like, oh, we're just here to keep what's running, rather than going to stakeholders and that question, like, how do I make your day easier? Like, that's my job at the end of the day, is to make people's day as pleasurable as possible with spending as least money as possible. And if I can do that really well, then I get the best of both worlds. I've got a happy CEO because they're getting like, we're not spending too much. And then I have a happy employee staff, and hopefully support's lower as well because they've got the tools they need to then deliver on what I call the exciting part of the business. They get to make these amazing experiences, amazing products for our customers to enjoy. And I'm just there to hopefully give them the tools they need to deliver that day in, day out.
Amazing. I think this is where all the SaaS management tools definitely help out, where you see visibility of usage, and then you email the inactive users and also send the report to the execs that, hey, we took care of this, everyone's happy. That's great to hear, Sam. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today in SaaS Masterminds. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you and know how you have grown your career and how you're managing SaaS applications at Bloom and Wild. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been exciting to talk about it all.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, folks. This is Sam Middleton from Bloom and Wild and Prasanna Naik here from CloudEagle, signing off on SaaS Masterminds podcast. Thank you. Bye.